Experts tell ST when the time comes for COVID-19 booster shots, you may not get the same vaccine you've already received. Singapore is sending 500,000 Pfizer vaccine doses to Australia this week as part of a swap deal. And what now for Afghanistan? The last US soldier has left the country, ending a 20-year war. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. Now there's increasing discussion around the world of vaccine booster shots against COVID-19. Some countries like the US and South Korea are already planning to offer extra doses to parts of their population in the coming weeks. Well, when booster shots are rolled out in Singapore, experts tell the Straits Times that some may be given the same vaccine they took before, while others may be administered a different one. Both approaches are being considered, according to Associate Professor Lim Po Lian from NCID, who's also a member of the Expert Committee on COVID-19 vaccination. She said it may not be a one-size-fits-all recommendation, as what might be good for older adults might have more side effects in younger people. Experts here will need more time to collect and analyze the data before making a recommendation. Well, speaking of extra jabs, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong wrote in a Facebook post that the 500,000 Pfizer doses that Singapore will receive in December as part of a vaccine swap arrangement with Australia will, quote, have more potential use for us as booster shots then. Under the deal, this week, Australia will receive 500,000 Pfizer shots from Singapore's existing stock, and in return, Australia will send the same amount back to Singapore at the end of the year.
It's a dose swap deal, which simply means we're taking the 500,000 they have now, so we can put that into our distribution this month coming in September, and we will provide them with 500,000 in December. That means there are 500,000 doses extra that will happen in September that otherwise would have had to wait for several months from now, accelerating our vaccination program at this critical time as we work towards those 70% and 80% targets.
Well, just under 28% of Australia's population is fully vaccinated. This in contrast to the 80% of Singapore residents who have gotten both doses, a milestone that was met last Sunday. Well, as you can see here by the light grey line, 90% of seniors 60 to 69 years old are fully vaccinated, 84% of those 70 and above as well, shown by the dark grey line. Meanwhile, seniors form the majority of the 5 COVID-19 patients in ICU as at yesterday, and of these 5, 4 are unvaccinated. America's longest war is officially over. Afghanistan is now under Taliban rule. Well, after 20 years of fighting, US troops have ended their military mission and pulled out of the country. Well, here is the picture of the last American soldier to leave Afghanistan, Major General Chris Donahue, boarding a cargo plane at Kabul airport. With that, Washington says it will now focus its efforts on diplomacy.
We have a plan for what's next. We're putting it into action. This moment also demands reflection. The war in Afghanistan was a 20-year endeavor. We must learn its lessons and allow those lessons to shape how we think about fundamental questions of national security and foreign policy. We owe that to future diplomats, policymakers, military leaders, service members. We owe that to the American people.
Well, with more is the Straits Times' foreign editor, Bhagyashree Gareka. Welcome back to the show, Bhagya. So what does the US's withdrawal mean for the Afghan people, especially with their life back under a Taliban rule again?
Well, it's a bit like Back to the Future. So, the Taliban were in power when the US attacked and invaded Afghanistan, mainly because the Taliban was sheltering the Al-Qaeda chief, Osama bin Laden, and he was the guy behind the 9/11 attacks. So what do we know of those years? We know pretty much that, in a word, the Taliban rule was quite brutal. And so there were things like public hangings in squares, in football stadiums. There were lynchings. There were, limbs amputated for certain crimes. Things of this sort. What else? Well, women's rights were quite severely curtailed. So you had women who were forced to wear, cover themselves top to bottom, and they had to wear niqab. Niqab is something that, so you see only the eyes, So it's quite restrictive by way of education, by way of jobs. It was very little, very restrictive. And even for the rest of the country, I think jobs were in short supply. So as such, the economy, the whole system of governance was backward looking, right? Now, if you hear the Taliban leaders today, the spokesmen today talk about, what the government is going to be like under them, you hear them saying that, no, we won't be doing that kind of thing. But again, if you notice, first of all, they're not consistent. They say one thing, one leader says one thing, for instance, on women's rights. The other leader might contradict him. That's gone on. And secondly, they have little credibility. Because from everything we know about these people who are now back in power, it doesn't lead you to believe that this is going to be a shining new Afghanistan.
Right. Well, Bhagia, then what do you think is the state of the Taliban now? Is it stronger or weaker than before the US's presence in Afghanistan back in 2001?
Well, they've outlasted the US military for 20 years. So that tells you a lot about their state, their strength, right? The second thing, they have inherited, the resources and the military assets which were given to the previous government, the Ashraf Ghani government, by the US. So they have that. They are in control of most of the country, except maybe some pockets where there's resistance. And I think most people would say that Taliban is there to stay for years, if not decades. There might be some kind of civil war going on and resistance going on, but I think there's little doubt that Taliban is going to stay. And the other thing would be that they also have, you must have read reports that we've published about Taliban inheriting, $1 trillion worth of minerals. So these things, rare things like lithium, which we use for batteries. So Taliban has inherited all that as well. So from most angles that you look at, they are pretty strong.
Okay, well, back to today's, or rather last night's developments. According to Secretary of State Antony Blinken, America's work in Afghanistan continues, and there's a plan that they're putting into action. But based on what you said about the state of the Taliban currently, what can the US do now that its military presence in Afghanistan has ended?
Well, whatever that plan be, I'm quite skeptical. Basically, the US is not left with a lot of leverage. They've left, as of today, there's still about 100, 200 Americans left there, but they expect to get them out. Beyond that, what do they have? I think it's China, in fact, which is building up links with Taliban, which will have something of a say in the affairs of that country. As for the US, I think Mr. Blinken hasn't revealed much of his plans as yet. But from what we know, he's talked about being together with international allies and trying to make sure that relief and humanitarian supplies, for instance, that were meant for certain groups, those are not hijacked and end up with the government. So he's talking of misuse, preventing the misuse of that kind of thing. But yeah, at the moment, I'm afraid, US doesn't really have a lot left in the country.
Right, of course, we'll keep an eye on these developments as the weeks and the months progress. Bhagia, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been speaking with the Straits Times' foreign editor, Bhagia Srigareka. Back home, Charlotte Liu, owner of pet hotel Platinum Dogs Club, has been jailed for 2 weeks and fined $35,700 for failing to properly care for the animals entrusted to her. She's also been banned from running pet-related businesses for a year. Numerous dogs had suffered under Liu's care and 2 of them died. Under GovTech's new program, ethical hackers anywhere in the world who detect and report security vulnerabilities in Singapore's critical government systems will be offered cash rewards ranging from $200 to $5,000 depending on the severity of the vulnerabilities discovered. A special bounty of up to $150,000 will be awarded for discovering cyber weaknesses that could cause exceptional impact on selected systems and data. Well, the program will run continuously and cover 3 systems first: SingPass and CodePass, member e-services under the Manpower Ministry and CPF, as well as MOM's WorkPass integrated system. According to non-constituency MP Leong Man Wai, the Progress Singapore Party has filed a private member's motion in Parliament on issues about jobs and foreign workforce policy, which he expects will be debated on September 13th or 14th. The submitted motion is, quote, that this Parliament calls upon the government to take urgent and concrete action to address the widespread anxiety among Singaporeans on jobs and livelihood caused by the foreign talent policy and the movement of natural persons provisions in some free trade agreements like CECA. Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. Join me tomorrow on The Big Story.